Behind the trees in the forest, Tanjiro worriedly watches a young child yell at the Mist Hashira, proclaiming that he wouldn't hand over his key and won't tell him how to use it. Thinking that it's rude to eavesdrop, Michiro suddenly strikes and grips the boy, much to Tanjiro's horror as he races over to help the young boy and tries to free him from Michiro's grip. Tanjiro asks the Hashira to let the boy go, but Michiro hesitates. Despite having a smaller and thinner body than Tanjiro, Michiro does not budge and asks for Tanjiro to release his hold. He then quickly punches him in the stomach, causing him to drop to the floor. He then starts calling him weak, saying that Demon Slayer Corps have gotten weak as they allowed the weakling like him to join it. The Hashira senses a demon presence in Tanjiro's box, and when he decides to check it, Tanjiro slaps his hand away, telling him to not ever touch it. He then frees the boy from his grip and starts asking about whether he's okay or not. The boy then told Michiro that he will never hand over the key to him even if he tried to torture him. Michiro tells him that torture training is something even grown-ups can't take it, since he's a child, he won't last. He insults the boy, stating that a Hashira's time is worth far more than the time spent by the other people, and since swordsmiths can't fight, they can't save lives. They are only good at making swords since they don't know anything else, and asks the boy again to hand over the key. Tanjiro, annoyed at his words, slaps his hand again and tells him that he was too cruel to the child. When asked about this, Tanjiro tells him that his words are true, but being a swordsmith is also an important vital job. Further explaining that swordsmiths have amazing skills that are different than theirs, and if they don't make swords for the Demon Slayer Corps, then the Corps couldn't do anything. He also says that swordmen and swordsmiths need each other since they are battling the same battle. Annoyed at his speech, Michiro cuts him off and hits him in the neck, knocking him out cold. While unconscious, Tanjiro notices Haganazuka's presence, who was asking the young boy to look after him, but the latter runs off as soon as Tanjiro begins to regain consciousness. After picking himself up, Tanjiro excitedly inquires whether Haganazuka was just there or not, but the boy nervously denies it. The boy also reveals that he gave the key to Michiro, in which Tanjiro apologizes for intervening as it wasn't his place to. The boy then thanked the Demon Slayer for standing up to the Hashira in order to defend a complete stranger. The two converse, and the boy informs Tanjiro about the key's use, which is to operate a deteriorating mechanical doll that had been built by his ancestors and was used for swordsmen to train. In the middle of their conversation, the two suddenly hear loud sounds. The boy leads Tanjiro over to where Michiro is intensely training with the battle doll, telling him that the name of the mechanical doll is Yoruichi Type 0. While watching Michiro train against the mechanical doll, Tanjiro looks at the doll's face and ponders the idea that he has seen it before. He asks the young boy why the doll had 6 arms, to which he is told that as it was modeled after a real swordsman, and the doll's 6 arms were necessary to imitate his movements. Tanjiro tries to push for more information, but the boy apologizes and states he didn't know much else, besides that it originated in the Sengoku period. Surprised, Tanjiro notes how that must mean Yoruichi Type 0 is over 300 years old, and even so, it still hadn't been destroyed. The boy replies that his ancestors were able to construct the doll at a level that couldn't be accomplished again at the present time. Despite being the heir of the great swordsmith, he even can't endure its durability, and wouldn't be able to fix it himself, especially without the aid of his late father, stating that he doesn't possess the knowledge or skills to do so. Hearing this, Tanjiro understands the reasoning behind his resolve to not hand over the key to someone that could potentially break the doll. The two observe Michiro for a while longer, and Tanjiro admires the Hashira's uncanny degree of skill, despite being of similar age. Michiro's Kasugai Crows chips in and loudly praises her master's abilities, referring to him as a descendant of the sun-breathing users and a genius completely different from Tanjiro. Amazed at his bloodline heritage, Tanjiro curiously inquires why Michiro wasn't able to use the sun-breathing, but gets received an angry assault from the crow to his cheek. While he is being attacked by her, Tanjiro suddenly remembers the dream he had and how the swordsman he saw had a face that matched that of the doll's. Hearing his words, the crow stops and grumpily questions the logic behind his words, given how the swordsman was from so long ago. The young boy pitches in, proposing that perhaps it was a memory that was passed on, revealing that he's been told on his village that people don't just inherit physical forms from their ancestors, but also their memories too, suggesting that it may be similar to what Tanjiro was experiencing. The crow thinks of this idea as nonsense but is cut off as Tanjiro introduces himself to the boy, and the boy introduces himself as Kotetsu. Suddenly, the group hears a sound and witness Michiro destroying parts of the doll, with pieces of its armor flying away. Devastated at the sight, Kotetsu runs away to the forest and Tanjiro followed him. He asks Kotetsu to show himself up or otherwise he will find him since he's got a great sense of smell. Tanjiro then finds Kotetsu hiding in a tree, crying over the broken doll. Tanjiro attempts to motivate him by saying he'll eventually be able to improve and fix it, in which Kotetsu replies that he is too pathetic to do so. Tanjiro climbs up the tree and flicks Kotetsu as a method of snapping him back into reality, exclaiming how he had to make the effort and develop the skills so that even if he wasn't able to fix Yoruichi Type 0, the generations after him would. Tanjiro compares his struggle with Kotetsu's, affirming that even if he dies before he is able to accomplish his goals, including killing Muzan and turn his demon sister back to human, someone else will eventually be able to do so in his place so long as the framework is set. Cheered up, Kotetsu and Tanjiro conclude to determinedly work hard together. While they chat during a walk through the forest, they encounter Michiro again, who expresses that the training was helpful. However, his sword broke, so he will be taking one of the doll's swords. He tosses the broken sword indifferently to Tanjiro, asking him to discard it. Although confused by the swordsman's attitude, Tanjiro notes he lacked a malicious aura and likely wasn't acting rudely on purpose. A storm brews overhead as Tanjiro rushes to Kotetsu, who appears aloof while staring at the broken doll in the rain. Tanjiro suggests they check if it can still move, which is met by approval from the boy. As they pick it up, it remains stagnant for a few moments before suddenly shifting into a stance, much to Tanjiro's excitement. Kotetsu then fiercely orders him to train with the doll and becomes stronger than Michiro with his aid, causes Tanjiro to be in sudden shock. As he tries to step away from the training, Kotetsu proposes a variety of insults Tanjiro could use once he becomes stronger than Michiro, but Tanjiro refuses the thought and decided to train with the doll and become stronger. He begins to train with Yoruichi Type 0, with Kotetsu's analytical skills and newfound motivation being used to excessively critique the demon slayer's movements. He declares that until Tanjiro can accomplish what he wants, he won't receive food. Kotetsu shows Tanjiro another method of adjusting the doll's movements through twisting its fingers, such that it'd coordinate with its user's weaknesses, and compares the actions to that of playing with a wooden puzzle box. After readjusting the doll, Tanjiro continues brutally training with it without food, water, or sleep under Kotetsu's direction, because the latter does not understand the limits of a human. Just as Tanjiro approaches the brink of death, analogous to nearly crossing the Sanzu River, he becomes capable of smelling the incoming movement of the doll and lands a hit on it, earning him his first meal. After gaining this ability to predict movements, Tanjiro continues to train it and improves his stamina and foresight. In the middle of a spar with the doll, Tanjiro's newly improved abilities grant him an opening to behead it. However, he hesitates mid-swing and worries about breaking the doll. Kotetsu yells at him to strike, reassuring him that he would be able to fix it. Internally, the young boy begs Tanjiro to not waver so that one day, he will become stronger than anyone else. With Kotetsu's approval obtained, Tanjiro succeeds in landing a blow to the doll's neck and breaks his training sword in the process. He apologizes to Kotetsu for the ruined sword and, after Kotetsu's sudden exclamation, Tanjiro turns to see a sword's hilt emerging from the doll's body where its head used to be. A sword's hilt appearing out of the broken Yorichi Type 0 startles Tanjiro Kamado and Kotetsu, who shout in shock. Their surprise quickly shifts to fascination and excitement as the pair attempts to deduce the age of the blade. Kotetsu urges Tanjiro to take the sword, but Tanjiro is adamant on the fact that he could not and that the doll breaking to make it appear wasn't completely his doing. Kotetsu insists that as the owner of the doll, he has the final say and that Tanjiro should take it, especially considering how he needed a new blade anyways. Caving in, Tanjiro pulls out the blade as Kotetsu watches excitedly in anticipation, but they are crestfallen after seeing the blade had rusted with its age. Kotetsu tries to apologize to a tearful Tanjiro for getting his hopes up, but they are suddenly interrupted by a muscular Hotaru Haganazuka emerging from the woods. Hotaru mentions that he heard their conversation and tries to take the sword from Tanjiro and Kotetsu, who resist. They try to get Hotaru to explain his motive, but the swordsmith continues to try to take the sword and finally forces it out of their hands. Kozo Kanamori appears behind Hotaru and tickles his sides, making him fall limp. Kozo greets Tanjiro and Kotetsu and goes on to explain Hotaru's situation. He states that Hotaru had been remotely training in order to improve his forging skills so he could make a strong sword for Tanjiro, in which the demon slayer happily admires Hotaru's thoughtfulness. Kozo continues on, saying how Tanjiro's repeated requests for swords from Hotaru made him happy, as he lost many of his clients with his personality. Amidst their continuous chatter, Hotaru suddenly regains consciousness and confidently declares that he will fix the rusted blade. Kotetsu fusses over how he could have just easily explained before they fought over the sword, which results in an angered Hotaru lifting Kotetsu by the neck. The next day, Tanjiro talks about Hotaru's progress on the sword with Genya Shinazugawa, who, angered by Tanjiro's presence and attempts at friendliness, tries to get him to leave. When he starts yelling, Tanjiro notices that the tooth he had pulled out a few days ago had reappeared. He questions him on this and shows the tooth he had picked up as proof, disgusting Genya and resulting in him being kicked out of the room. Saddened, Tanjiro ponders his fellow demon slayer's consistent anger. Later that night, a swordsmith strolls through the village after a bath and encounters a pot on the ground. Curious, he reaches for it but is suddenly engulfed by the pot, killing him. Gyako, the upper rank 5, emerges and comments on the poor quality of the swordsmith as a meal. Elsewhere, upper rank 4 Hantengu cowers on a roof and states they must quickly accomplish their mission. An asleep Tanjiro Kamado is woken by Michiro Takito pinching his nose. The Mist Hashira questions Tanjiro if he knew Kozo Kanamori's whereabouts, as he was his new swordsmith. Tanjiro mentions that he was likely with Hotaru Haganazuka and offers to help find them. Michiro asks why Tanjiro would willingly accompany him when he had other things to be doing, and Tanjiro replies he believes helping others would positively benefit him. At Tanjiro's words, Michiro feels a strong sense of familiarity and questions him on what he had just said. The demon slayer tries to reply, but is hit by an awakened Nezuko, breaking Michiro's perception. Seeing Nezuko, Michiro comments on her uniqueness and wonders where he'd seen her before while Tanjiro worries about Shichamaru, Tamayo's feline assistant, appearing before them. The trio keep thinking about their respective worries, and Tanjiro and Michiro sense a presence behind the doors. When they glance over, Hantengu crawls into the room without radiating his presence as a demon. Tanjiro and Michiro both realize Hantengu is an upper rank and prepare to attack, with Michiro immediately using mist breathing, 4th form, shifting flow slash. Hantengu swiftly dodges to the ceiling and cries, begging the demon slayers not to hurt him. Tanjiro tells himself not to hesitate, and uses Hotaru's newly forged blade to attack Hantengu with Hanakami Kagura, sunflower thrust. Hantengu dodges again, but receives a blow from Nezuko in her awakened form. Tanjiro tells Nezuko not to transform and meanwhile, Michiro successfully beheads Hantengu. Tanjiro remembers that beheading an upper rank does not necessarily result in its death based on his prior fight with Daki and Jutaro, and yells at Michiro to keep his focus. Right as he does so, the severed head and body transforms into two new demons, one of which holds a leaf-shaped fan. Michiro attacks the demon with the fan, while Tanjiro takes on the other. As Michiro rushes to attack, the demon waves his fan at him and intensely blasts Michiro out of the building. Tanjiro and Nezuko manage to hold on to the rubble and come face to face with the two demons. Karaku, the demon with the fan, asks his partner Sekido if he was having fun. Sekido responds negatively, and uses his staff to emit bolts of lightning-like attacks, which slowly make Tanjiro lose consciousness. Before he does, he sees Genya Shinazugawa on the rooftop pointing a gun at Sekido. Genya Shinazugawa shoots both Sekido and Karaku with his Nichiren gun, blasting off Sekido's head and nearly decapitating Karaku. Karaku expresses enjoyment towards the fight as Genya rushes in to slash off his head with a Nichiren sword. Tanjiro yells at Genya that his attacks were futile and the demons were willingly being beheaded so they could keep splitting and increase their attack power. As the battle continues, Tanjiro desperately analyzes his opponents and tries to pinpoint their weaknesses, but his thoughts are interrupted by a third, bird-like demon, Yurogi, who lifts him up into the air with his foot. Realizing that each demon has a unique ability, Tanjiro instructs Nezuko to assist Genya, but horrified, he realizes that his teammate had been impaled by a fourth demon, Aizetsu. Yurogi taunts him for worrying about others and not himself, proceeding to generate a sonic scream. Tanjiro attempts to counter with a Nakami Kagura and successfully cuts off Yurogi's leg, but he is unable to dodge his scream and is violently struck with the attack as he falls. Tanjiro plummets through the trees and lands hard on the ground. He pleads himself to get up and protect the village, but his injuries render him incapable of easily moving. Aizetsu lands near him and holds his leg down as he directs another shriek, and Tanjiro silently watches in alarm. Elsewhere, Michiro dashes through the forest as he makes his way back to the village. He spots Kotetsu trying to hold off a minion fish demon and internally decides that he is not of priority to save, considering the boy's lack of refined swordsmanship skills and the importance of the village chief. However, as he hears Kotetsu's cries as the demon grabs him, Michiro remembers Tanjiro's words of how helping others would positively benefit himself. He slashes the fish demon's arm, releasing Kotetsu, and stands guard over the boy while requesting for him to run so he wouldn't be in the way. After decapitating the fish demon, Takito was taken aback as its head grew back instantly. It was then that he noticed a vase on the demon's back, and after slicing through it, he finally succeeded in killing the demon. His suspicion that it was a blood demon art was confirmed. Looking up to his savior, Kotetsu clung onto Takito tightly, expressing his gratitude for saving his life and apologizing for his past insults, which the demon's slayer Hashira didn't even recall. As Kotetsu's animosity towards him faded away, Takito tried to leave, but he was stopped in his tracks as Kotetsu pleaded with him to save Kozo, who was being attacked at that very moment. He also revealed to Takito that Haganazuka had been alone for days, tirelessly sharpening her blade, and implored him to rescue them. Takito is initially hesitant to respond to Kotetsu's plea for help, but suddenly recalls the encouraging words spoken to him by Kagaya Obuyashiki, the leader of the Demon's Slayer Corps. As he lay recovering from a vicious demon attack, Kagaya had assured Takito that his lost memories would eventually return to him if he simply focused on staying alive. Even the smallest events could trigger these memories to resurface, and Kagaya had advised Takito to seize any opportunity to clear his mind. Now, taking Kagaya's words to heart, Takito hoists Kotetsu onto his shoulder and races through the forest, despite the young swordsmith's evident fear. As he runs, Takito wonders if he's making the right decision. After all, leaving the village to save Kozo and Haganazuka could put its protection in jeopardy. However, he is determined to succeed. As the Mist Hashira, he is one of the most skilled and capable demon slayers in the Corps. After Tanjiro slices the winged demon's head in half, he realizes that it's not over yet as the halves form new mouths and unleash a barrage of attacks. Although he is initially taken aback by the unexpected assault, he quickly realizes that the demon's power is weakening, indicating that the four demons share a certain amount of power between them. Tanjiro then notices an etching on each demon's tongue that corresponds to a particular emotion, and the demon he is currently facing is the Demon of Joy, a clone of upper rank 4 Hantengu. Determined to end the fight, Tanjiro stabs through the halves of flesh, but to his surprise, the winged demon reappears and launches another sonic attack. This time, Tanjiro manages to dodge the attack just in time, narrowly avoiding being hit. As he looks down at his sword, he realizes that the demon flesh on it has vanished, leaving him to wonder what caused it to disappear. The winged demon swoops down at Tanjiro, attacking him multiple times with quick and ferocious slashes. The demon slayer is left with deep wounds on his left shoulder, right shoulder, forearm, thigh, chest, and back, as the demon continues to assault him relentlessly. Despite the pain and injuries, Tanjiro remains focused and determined to stop the demon. He manages to slice through the demon's head and tongue as it swoops down again to attack, causing it to slow down and heal. As the winged demon takes flight once more, Tanjiro realizes that he is currently unable to help his sister Nezuko and comrade Genya, who are still in danger. With his attention fully on the battle, he urges them to stay alive and keep fighting. At the building of the swordsmith village, Nezuko is struggling with Karaku while Genya is immobilized by a piercing wound from a yari in his chest. Sekido, the demon of anger, one of the 4 clones of upper rank 4, impatiently orders his comrades to finish off the demon's slayer and his sister, but Karaku seems to derive pleasure from dragging out the fight. Frustrated, Sekido instructs the demon of sadness, Aizetsu, to assist Karaku instead and finish off the struggling Nezuko. However, the demon of sadness, who had been instructed to help kill Nezuko, is unable to do so due to his yari being impaled in Genya's chest. Seizing the opportunity, Genya pulls out his gun and manages to land a fatal shot on the demon of sadness, causing his head to explode. Furious at Aizetsu's lack of action, Sekido orders him to kill Nezuko, but the demon of sadness is distracted by Genya's unexpected recitation of the Amida Sutra. As Aizetsu swings his yari down towards Genya's neck, he is surprised to see that he misses the demon slayer completely. Genya suddenly appears behind him and tries to strike his neck, but he is shocked by Sekido's electricity, which leaves him struggling to pull the trigger of his shotgun. Despite the odds stacked against him, Genya manages to muster the strength to aim at Sekido and fires, severing the demon's right hand. The demon of anger is unable to believe that Genya is still alive, even though he has sustained severe wounds from his lightning attack and Aizetsu's spear attack. In retaliation, Aizetsu swings his yari and slams the shaft into Genya's chest, sending him flying across the room. As Karaku has his fun, he ruthlessly attacks Nezuko and impales her torso with his foot. He then instructs Sekido to use his kakura to impale her and shock her until she is immobilized. Sekido, filled with rage, declares that this was his original plan. In an attempt to free herself, Nezuko kicks Karaku in the jaw and partially severs his neck before ripping her hand away. Despite his injuries, the demon of pleasure heals himself, but is sprayed with Nezuko's blood, which enables her to use exploding blood and sets him ablaze. As Nezuko struggles to defend herself, she twists Karaku's hand off and uses the Uchiwa to blast him away with his own wind. She then tries to use the same move against Sekido, but he quickly swats the Uchiwa away with his kakura. In a moment of desperation, Nezuko tries to dodge Sekido's attack but is stabbed in the neck. Sekido then uses his electricity to shock her, rendering her unable to move. At the swordsmith village forest, Tanjiro continues to struggle against the winged demon, desperately trying to find a way to protect himself and his companions. Although he sustains a cut to his cheek, he refuses to give up and looks for a way to outmaneuver the relentless beast. Despite his best efforts, however, he finds himself at a loss, with no clear strategy in sight. The building where Nezuko and Genya are located is tantalizingly close, but Tanjiro is hesitant to take his eyes off the demon for even a second. As the demon swoops down once more, Tanjiro tries to strike at its feet but misses, and barely manages to evade its razor-sharp claws. He knows that he must think fast and act decisively, but his mind is clouded with fear and uncertainty. All he can do is plead with his friends to stay alive and hold on until he can come to their aid. Meanwhile, Aizetsu approaches Genya, who appears to be unconscious, only to be surprised when he hears the demon's slayer reciting sutras. Confused and curious, Aizetsu asks Genya who he is, to which Genya calmly responds that his name is Shinazugawa Genya, the man who will ultimately defeat him. Determined to reach his comrades, Tanjiro devises a daring plan to take down the winged demon Yurogi. With the building where Nezuko and Genya are being held in sight, Tanjiro baits Yurogi by running towards the structure. As the demon swoops down with claws outstretched, Tanjiro slides beneath him and quickly thrusts his blade through Yurogi's leg and into his mouth. The demon flails wildly, clawing at Tanjiro's back, but the young demon slayer grits his teeth and endures the pain. As he struggles to control Yurogi's flailing body, Tanjiro realizes that the demon is surprisingly light. Using his sword to steer himself and Yurogi, Tanjiro manages to guide them both back to the building. He crashes through the wall with Yurogi's body, surprising Sekido, who was busy torturing Nezuko. To his shock, Sekido sees that both Karaku and Yurogi have been defeated. Tanjiro picks himself in time to see Sekido paralyzing Nezuko. When he dashes to save her, Sekido generates another staff and tries to hit Tanjiro, but the boy uses Yurogi's foot to defend himself and prevent the lightning from reaching him. He then slices the demon's head and tongue, stalling some time for him to pull the staff out of Nezuko's neck. Suddenly, Tanjiro gets slammed down on the ground with the second staff and is about to receive a shock of lightning, but Nezuko recovers in time to burn Sekido and prevent him from hurting him. Relieved that Nezuko's blood demon art is effective, he looks up in time to see Karaku soar through the air and hit the building's floor with enough pressure to bore a hole through it and render Tanjiro and Nezuko unconscious. Yurogi, Karaku, and Sekido then regroup and gaze over their opponents, planning on dealing the final blow. A swordsmith rings the village's alarm to announce the arrival of the fish demons and instructs the civilians to defend themselves, right before being consumed by a demon. Elsewhere in the village, a group of swordsmiths try to defend themselves as a fish demon approaches them. A crow caws through the night as Mitsuri Kanroji runs through the forest. She tells herself to hurry and enthusiastically states the convenience of the swordsmith village being close to where she was stationed.